I've built a fair few good looking PCs in my time, whether that's my main PC build that I'm still using now, or the stunning height-wise 60 build that I did on here a couple of months ago. And today's no different because I'm finally doing a build that I've been meaning to do for quite some time now, and as you can see, it is going to be absolutely epic. So let's get started. So yes, as I mentioned, today's build is one that has been in the pipeline for quite some time, and I was meant to do it a few months back, but I was waiting on parts and then life got in the way. But a few months ago, NZXT sent me out some of their awesome new parts, which you've probably seen around quite a bit by now, but today I'm finally going to be putting them together into this build. As with all of my builds, I'll be going through all of the parts that I'm going to be using and then the entire build process from start to finish, so if you guys want to do a similar build, you'll be able to learn how. And of course, I'll have all of the parts linked down in the description below. And of course, a special thank you to NZXT for sending out a load of these parts because I wouldn't have been able to do this build without it. So the first thing we need to do before we can actually start the build is go through all of the parts that I'm going to be using. Some of the parts have already been used in previous builds, so you might recognize them, but I'm going to be putting them into this one because they either work really well with the other parts or they just look really nice. So the case for this build is the NZXT H5 Flow RGB, which is basically an RGB updated version of the H5 Flow. It has the same mesh front panel for good cooling, and then inside the case are 4 pre-installed fans, including 2 140mm RGB fans in the front, a 120mm non-RGB fan in the rear, and then there's also this dedicated GPU fan in the bottom to pull air into the case and keep your GPU nice and cool. There's also support for up to a 240mm radiator in the top of the case, which is perfect because the cooler we're going to be using is the Kraken Elite 240 RGB, which of course is the newest version of their ever popular Kraken Cooler series. For the motherboard, NZXT have also supplied an N7 Z790, which is absolutely beautiful, and I know a lot of people think this is the best looking white motherboard on the market. And then finally, they've also supplied me with a 1200 watt power supply. Moving on to the rest of the parts, and for the GPU, I'm going to be using this 4070 Ti, which I actually used back in the height-wise 60 build, and this is one of my personal favorite GPUs because it is absolutely beautiful. Not to mention it has great gaming performance, so it'll be perfect for this rig. To pair with that, I'm using this Intel i7-13700K, which was also in the height-wise 60 build, and again, this is a great combination together with the Z790 motherboard and the 4070 Ti. For the RAM, I'm using 32GB of 7000MHz T-Force Delta RGB DDR5, and the final piece of the jigsaw is this 1TB CS3140 SSD from Accelerate Gaming. So there you go, that's all the parts I'm going to be using for this PC, and there are some really high-end and beautiful looking parts for this build, so I'm very excited to crack on. So let's do exactly that. Now, as with any PC build, the first step is to put together the motherboard assembly, including the CPU, RAM and SSD, so the first thing I need to do is take this Z790 motherboard and get it out the box. Now I can take the Intel i7-13700K CPU and install it into the motherboard. As I always say in these build videos, installing a CPU is a lot easier than some people think. Just make sure to line up the little arrow properly and carefully place it into the socket and you're all set. Next up, I can install these 32GB of T-Force Delta DDR5 7000MHz RAM, and for this build I'm only using 2 sticks of RAM rather than 4, which caused chaos in the comment section of the last video. Then the final step for the motherboard assembly is to install this SSD from Accelerate Gaming. First, let's remove the magnetic cover and the heatsink from the motherboard. Then I can slot in the SSD and pop everything back into place. And there we go, the motherboard assembly is all done and looking super clean, so the next thing I need to do is actually put this into the H5 Flow RGB case. After carefully screwing the motherboard assembly into the case, everything is looking fantastic, so now we can move on to the next part, which is installing this Kraken Elite AIO Cooler. First, let's get the box opened up and take out everything we need, including the instructions that I'm definitely going to read, the 2 120mm RGB fans, the RGB fan control hub, all the included brackets and fixings and cables, and then of course finally the pump and radiator itself. Assembly is pretty simple, we just need to take the 2 RGB fans and screw them into the radiator. And now we can secure the fan and radiator assembly into the top of the case. And with the radiator secured in place, now we can take our RGB hub and plug in our 2 fans. The next job is to take the Intel retention bracket and to insert it into the back of the motherboard. And then we can take the correct Intel standoffs for this socket and screw them into place. Now we're ready to install the pump, and as you can see, the Kraken does come with pre-installed thermal paste, so I'm just going to be using that. Then we can take the pump and line it up with the standoffs, lower it carefully into place and secure it with the 4 thumb screws, making sure to not over tighten them as we don't want to cause any damage. Now for the fun part, sorting out all the cables. So we have the connector that goes into the pump itself, a USB header that plugs into the motherboard, a 3-pin fan header, and a splitter cable with connections for both of the fans. And with all of those plugged in, the cooler is now properly installed and the build is really starting to take shape. And I have to say already, this case, motherboard and cooler combo is looking extremely clean. Now that's all in, the next thing we need to do is install the power supply. The C1200 that NZXT have supplied will not only be more than enough for this build at 1200 watts, but it also has the new 16-pin GPU connector built in, so no need to faff around with splitters or adapters. With all of that unboxed, we can set about installing it into the build, which is as simple as just sliding it into the bottom of the case and securing it with the 4 screws. With the power supply installed and everything plugged in, as you can see, I've made an attempt at cable managing this build, but it's not that great. But hey, I've always said, as long as all the cables are plugged in and the back panel still goes on, everything is fine. Out of sight, out of mind, right? So now all that's left to do with this build is to install the graphics card. Now those who are familiar with my channel will have seen me unbox this card before. As I mentioned earlier in the video, I have already used this in the Height Y60 build that I did a few months back. And honestly, this white AIO 40 series design is one of my favorite GPUs of all time. It looks absolutely stunning and is one of the best finishing touches for any white PC build, so it's going to look great in this one. In order to install the GPU, we need to unscrew these slots from the back of the case. Then we can make sure the GPU is properly lined up with the PCIe lane on the motherboard and then carefully slot it into place. And then secure it with the 2 screws. Finally then we just need to plug in the power cable and then also the motherboard one, which I always leave until last just so that I know that the build is finished. But of course no build is finished until those peels are done. And with that, we can step back and take a look at what we've built, and this PC is beautiful. You know I'm a big fan of white PC builds, as you can tell from the Height Y60 build that I did and also my main PC build. And this combination of parts just comes together so well to create that beautiful, sleek white design. NZXT have done a great job with all these parts, and it works so well with this AIO 4070 Ti as well. So of course now the only thing left to do is to actually put this onto my desk and power it on. Of course, this is always the moment of truth for any build to see whether you've actually put everything together correctly, and as you can see, in this case we have. The build may have looked absolutely fantastic when it wasn't powered on, but with that RGB in there, it is looking fantastic. I really love these Kraken coolers that give you the ability to either show infographics of what's going on in your PC or display something like a GIF. And the upgraded screen on these newer Krakens makes it look even better. The lighting in this PC build looks immaculate, and when everything's set to white along with all of the white parts, it gives that beautiful icy vibe that I really dig. And of course, it's not just about looks, it's about how the PC performs, and after running a few games on here, I am very happy with the way it turned out. So if I want to kick back with some Minecraft, Cyberpunk or Forza, I know I can, and everything is going to run smoothly on this beautiful PC. So there you go, yet another stunning PC build completed on the channel. And of course, if any of you want to go back and check out any of my previous builds, they are all up on my channel ready to go. Thank you all so much for joining me through today's build. I hope you all enjoyed the video and found it helpful. And of course, if you did, hit that thumbs up button to tell the algorithm how much you enjoyed it. And then make sure to let me know down in the comments exactly what you think. Are you planning on doing a PC build anytime soon? Do you prefer the lighter or darker aesthetic? And what games would you play if you had this PC build? Let me know. And if you don't have any thoughts, just drop your favorite emoji or game in the comments for that all-important engagement. I have plenty of huge projects and fantastic content to come through the rest of this year and into 2024, so make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out. And if you're looking for even more content, I also have plenty on my TikTok and Instagram, which can be found down in the description along with my other socials. Thank you all again for watching. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week, and I will catch you guys in the next one. See you later.